This video is about how to start the research and writing process and essentially what to do once you selected a topic. So once you've selected a topic for your undergrad law review note, the most important thing to do is to read. Read as many sources as you can about your topic. And I think it's also important to really organize what you've read. So often I like to organize what I've read by organizing my information in a table. So I just do like insert table, and then on one column I do the source. So even if it's that's just like Roe v. Wade, so that I know where it came from. And then in the second side of the table, I just do bullet points about the case or about the law review article, about the legislation, or about another source. So I just do bullet point notes about the source that I got from the source. And obviously keeping in mind the page numbers so that I don't have to find those later on when I'm doing my citations. So essentially, to start the research process, you want to read as many sources as you can. Reading as many sources as you can will help you get different viewpoints about the topic that you chose, and it'll also help you narrow your topic and refine it to a very specific argument, especially if you started with a pretty broad topic. So in addition to reading and organizing what you've read, I highly suggest looking at the footnotes or citations of the sources that you started with, which may lead you to other sources. So for example, if I looked at the cases cited in Roe v. Wade, I would probably find Griswold versus Connecticut. And that would lead me to an additional court case to look at when I'm conducting my research. So I highly suggest that you look at other sources that are cited by the sources that you initially chose to lead you to more information. You can also look at other databases, simple Google searches, other court cases. There's a ton of different ways to find additional sources, books, Fordham's library. So I highly suggest looking just for as many sources as you can and reading them as closely as possible. So once you've read and organized what you've read, my next suggestion is to write out your thesis. So on the left side of the screen, I have my note, which I wrote for volume 4. And throughout my writing process, I kept my thesis highlighted so that I didn't lose sight of what I was trying to argue. Sometimes in conducting your research and writing and organizing your body paragraphs, it's easy to kind of forget or lose sight of exactly what you're trying to argue. So writing out your thesis and making sure that you understand what you're trying to argue, and then highlighting it and making sure that everything that you're doing is working toward your thesis will help you write a successful note. So oftentimes the thesis will just say like, this note will examine, or this note will argue. I have this note will examine the importance of adherence to the principle of stare decisis and will ultimately argue. So you can just say this note will argue that the presumption of severability applied to the individual mandate fits within the court's severability precedent and therefore works to promote stability, predictability, and consistency in the court. So after you've read and organized what you've read and then written out your thesis, my next suggestion is to develop your sections. So once you've read as many sources as possible, and once you've written out your thesis, you should have a clear idea of where your note should go. So oftentimes that just comes in a draft table of contents. So the first thing you might want to do is the introduction. And then, as you can see here, I have my table of contents in my note. And through my research, I was able to decide what sections I want to write. So I have the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. So that was really the background information of my argument. And then I have a bunch of different subsections just to organize it. So I have an important section of the legislation. I have an important court case about the legislation. I have further legislation relating to my topic. And then I have another court case. So your background information can come in the form of a variety of different subsections, but I think using the subsections is a great way of organizing what you're trying to say into a very logical and coherent paper. So then essentially you want to have a section about your argument. So this might be where you present your evidence and you outline why you think what you think. Sometimes people will do a counter argument and then you have the conclusion and implications, looking forward, etc. So I highly suggest that you try to come up with a very refined table of contents, similar to the table of contents that I have here, because it will allow you to organize the information that you found in your sources, and it will reveal to you what information you're lacking. So what information you need to further research. So once you develop broad sections or even narrow sections about what you want to say, the next step is to organize your information. So when you're organizing your information, you want to take the sources and the information that you found from your sources and organize it into the sections that you created. And this will first help you organize the information based on topic rather than source. And it will help you kind of figure out exactly where you're lacking so that you can go back and conduct more research if you are lacking in particular areas. So for example, if I had a ton of information about Section 5000A of the Affordable Care Act, but I didn't have a ton of information about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, I would know that I needed to find articles or court cases or legislation or more information about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, whereas I could focus my attention away from Section 5000A. And then obviously, once you have your information organized, it will provide you a really easy way to start writing your paragraphs, because you can essentially just sit down and if you have 2 hours to write, you can write the paragraphs that you have information for. And it will kind of give you a kind of a roadmap of where you might want to write first, where you want to start with. Usually people don't start with the introduction, they start with the body paragraphs. But I think organizing your information into your sections will help you understand exactly where you want to start writing. So that is my video on starting the research and writing process. If you have any questions, feel free to email fulr@fordham.edu, and good luck with your research.